Welcome to today's episode of the Indoencers Podcast. Our guest today is arguably most well known for rendering the song Unakaga, composed by the one and only AR Rahman. But her musical story extends far beyond just that. Her journey involves a deep exploration into both Hindustani and Carnatic music, a year of homeschooling so she could focus fully on music, a very eventful summer at the Berklee College of Music, plus so much more. She is somebody that, in my humble opinion, truly has a unique background and vision in terms of music. To talk about her journey thus far, I'm super excited to be joined by Madhura Dhara Talluri. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. That's such a sweet introduction. Wow. So nice.
No, this is you after all. It's not me,
Yes,
it's you.
it is. But not everybody does their research properly. So I was surprised that you got everything right.
So,
Nice.
so I started this podcast right when COVID happened. Not because of it. I'd been thinking about it before, but kind of it just turned out that way. So every episode has been, how have you dealt with the pandemic and things like that? And I hate asking it, but I feel like I have to.
It is an opening question, yeah.
Yeah, and I know it had an impact on like your college life as well. So yeah, could you just talk about how the last 2 years have been for you, both in and out of music?
Oh, I can't believe it's been 2 years already. So it started off when I was in my final year of college. I just had like a few exams to go and I've been done with college. Because I think it started in March of 2020, right? Yeah, during that lockdown, I was stuck at home, in Chennai for like a few months till I could go back home and the flight started and all. It was, well, to start off, it didn't really feel that big of a deal because I was sort of swamped with college work, even though it was like distance and I had to like give my exams online and stuff. That was a little tricky and annoying because like practical exams and all, it's better to give them in person and the theory exams and all that. But like it all passed by too quickly because they were just like busy with college stuff. But as soon as that got done, and I was also preparing for my concert in March in college. So as a final year paper, you have to give a 1 hour concert in your college. And I was supposed to give it in 2020 March. But then because of the pandemic and I was also not really well, I just chose to like give it the next year. Yeah. And then I was busy preparing for that. So even though I went back home, I was taking regular classes. And then during that time is when I started also teaching music. I think around 2020 June, I guess. I started taking classes for Carnatic music. So that really helped. I've heard a lot of people keep saying that, you should teach and that's going to help you become a better musician. And didn't really realize what they meant until I started doing it on my own. That's a whole different conversation. I'll come back to that, how teaching really helps. But so then after my concert got done in March, I was officially done with college. But I think that 1 year was just me preparing for that concert and just, going back home and college and all of that. So didn't really think of anything else. But after I finished and I was officially done with college in March of last year, I was just like, okay, now what? So now what should I be doing? So I started Hindustani classes again. I started learning Hindustani again. I'd taken a break in the middle because of college and because I was in Chennai and stuff. And I restarted Hindustani. I continued Carnatic. My end goal while I was still doing Carnatic was, okay, I was learning simultaneously, but also preparing for my concert. So that was how I was going. But now I was doing it just to like learn and not with the concert in mind. So that was happening and I started teaching. Then I think as things were settling down, I thought I'll come back to Chennai in April because all my work is here, right? Being in Delhi, I tried to record a couple of songs from there, but when the music director is not in front of you, it takes double the time actually to deliver. So I was thinking of coming back, but then the second wave happened and I was again stuck. So as soon as that got done, I came to Chennai. And so I've been living on my own. I took a flat. I've been living with a couple of musicians and I started learning the piano.
Oh, wow.
I'm teaching myself how to produce. So musically, I think it's taken off for me after I came back to Chennai. But for that, I think I probably grew as a person because I just had to be with myself while I was at home with nothing to do. So yeah, I think that's what that's how I describe my 2 years in pandemic. Was just, yeah, busy and yet not busy, and just finding myself out. It was a weird mix of everything. But
In
yeah.
a weird way, is being alone at home as a musician kind of a blessing in disguise, as a chance to explore, or did you not quite feel it that way?
So actually, I have something to say about that also. It wasn't so much of a blessing in disguise for me. I mean, it was in certain senses because I needed to learn to be with myself. I was a very social person. And I was constantly out, whether I was in college or whether I was recording or something. So I was always outside, but I never really just stayed with myself. So that way it did help. But I took for granted how many musicians I was in touch with before the pandemic, like whether it was in a studio when I had to go, or whether it was my college, batchmates or somebody. I was constantly around musicians and, watching concerts or going for recordings or being in a music college, obviously, or around musicians. But the moment I was, suddenly devoid of musicians, because back home, I didn't really have any musician friends in Delhi. And in a way, yes, it was good because I spent time with myself. But I also realized that I could have made use of my musician friends back then, which I didn't. And suddenly I had nobody but myself. So I desperately wanted to come back to a place where I could be around musicians more, because that really helps, I think, a musician grow when you're around other people in the same field as you. So I think maybe if I were probably a little more advanced in my field, where I've already started working on my music a little bit, and I needed that me time, then it probably would have helped. But I think since I was just starting out, still exploring what I wanted, I needed those people. And I think now that I've gotten that, I find myself more inspired than I was when I was away from people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely.
I was wondering if that made sense.
So, what I kind of like to do on the podcast is take things right back and kind of walk the steps you've walked and kind of see how your journey has panned out. So let's start from the very, very beginning. And I've heard that the moment where your parents discovered your inclination towards music was when your mom heard you sing the nursery rhyme, London Bridge is Falling Down, in tune. Would you say that's kind of your first memory of music, or was there something else?
My first memory of music, it has to be nursery rhymes. I used to sing them an awful lot.
Was it mainly like English ones, or I don't know,
that was
Telugu
one
ones,
London Bridge? No, there was one Hindi, because I was raised entirely in Gurgaon. So I had London Bridge was one, and there was one more. I think एक कौवा प्यासा था घड़े में पानी थोड़ा थोड़ा था, something. Till now I think it's about a crow which comes and puts pebbles in a ghada, which is like a pot with very less water. So as she keeps putting pebbles in it, the water rises up and then she's able to drink water. That's the story of the rhyme. But that was one thing which even now I think my dad's colleagues who had gone for a trip with and sung this rhyme, they just keep saying, oh, she used to sing that rhyme. So these two rhymes have forever just been with me. But rhymes I think would be my first musical memory, I think.
Something I noticed with a lot of the guests that I've interviewed in the past, particularly with singers, they seem to have this kind of like prodigy moment. So, I interviewed Sasha Tirupati in August, and she was talking about how like she was able to sing like complex gamakams in Lataji songs. And I was talking to Aditya Prakash, and he said he could identify ragams at the age of 4.
Wow.
Was this kind of your prodigy moment? Or was there something else?
I mean, rhymes, sure. The fact that I was able to sing in tune and, like in beat and stuff at such an early age. And I think she put me in classes immediately, but it was always that I could pick up songs really quickly. I could sing, like she said, gamakams really quickly. And I knew that's what I realized while I was taking classes, actually, just to connect the two, is that a lot of things which came easily to me when I was learning music, I don't know, not to sound conceited or like, just full of myself, but a lot of things came very easily to me. It wasn't much of a struggle. So, which also I think was a bad thing for me as a musician when I was a kid, because I rarely practiced. And even when I didn't practice, I used to do just fine, because the level of music didn't require that much practice. And when it started requiring that much practice, I didn't have the stamina to sit and practice for that long. Like when I came to college and all, obviously I needed to put more effort. But then I was just, I always used to find ways to not do it. When I was a kid, I used to hate practice. But yeah, so I think when I notice now when I'm taking classes, things which seemed so easy to me back then, which I see like my students and stuff start like, taking a little time. So now I realize that, like a lot of things back then were easy. And obviously teachers and all used to say, so I think I wouldn't go as far as saying prodigy moment, but I think it was just the fact that I was always in tune. I could also, if I heard a song, I used to play the harmonium, so I could just like figure out the notes. Yeah, I could just replay it very like when I was young. Now it's a very common thing which everybody does. But back then, when I was pretty young, yeah, I could figure out the notes. Kind of, I guess. Yeah. So those things really, they were just like, oh, so she can do this, she can do that. But I never really enjoyed classes and the whole classical scene back then. It always seemed like work to me. Like how I think Indian parents force their kids to like study and like do their homework and like do well in exams. That was never my case. I mean, they never bothered to like push me to study, but it was always like wake up in the morning, do riyaz, practice. You haven't done your practice today. So I was always forced for that. So I just used to avoid as much as I can. Although I enjoyed singing, but not the whole riyaz aspect of it, which I think I only started doing properly after I came to college.
And you brought up earlier that you're from a Telugu speaking family, but you were brought up in Delhi, and so there's that little bit of kind of contrast of cultures there. Was that ever something that you noticed, or was that ever something that was prevalent, or not really?
Not really. Not until I came to college. So back when I was in school, the entire time, I mean, they knew me as the South Indian who kept correcting people's pronunciations of sambar. It just used to really get on my nerves. I'd constantly be like, it's sambar, not sambar, not sambar. So that was as far as my South Indianness went with my fellow classmates. And I think growing up in Delhi also helped me. Like I knew a couple of people who lived in South India for like half their lives and then moved to Delhi. And then they had a little bit of tough time adjusting because they had that accent in their Hindi or they had a different culture. But because I grew up in Gurgaon the entire time, I was able to handle both cultures really well. But when I did come to college, even though I was a South Indian, even though I was from Andhra, I was treated like I was a North Indian. And there's a lot of politics in my college in terms of whether you're a North Indian or a Malayali or a Tamilian, or whether you're too modern or whether you're too open about what you're thinking and all of that, So I went through a lot of that after I came to college. So I think the culture shock part of it happened when I was in college, because we had to like wear saris every day, and there was, which I didn't have an issue with. The traditional part I didn't have an issue with, but it was just, there was always a sort of clash between me and them, because I think because of the way I grew up and the sort of ideals I grew up with. And I think even though I didn't open my mouth, I sort of had like this aura around me which said, she's open-minded. She doesn't, she's not as orthodox as all of y'all are. So, yeah. Slightly tough time then, but otherwise not much of a culture shock any other time.
Yeah, and another kind of interesting aspect of your musical beginning is that you were exposed to a lot of like older songs, if I'm correct, songs from S.T. Burman and Kantasala and others. And I know you were listening to like some newer songs as well, but were people ever surprised that you were so kind of wedded to songs from the yesteryear?
Yeah. Every time I'd play Antakshari with any of my friends or anything, I'd even now, I think I have an easier time recalling like older songs and, starting whatever letter with an older song than a newer song. Even though, yes, I have been listening to new songs, obviously, and I know a lot of them. But for some reason, I just, they're all just there permanently and they're all ready to just be plucked out. Yeah, people were always like, "Ye purane gaane gana shuru kar degi abhi." That is, she'll start singing old songs any second now. So there was that for a while. But I used to try to sing as many new songs as I could. But to be very honest, I think this is something I realized after a long time, was till ninth grade, I was in a different school. And there, like from my childhood till ninth, it was always my family or my family friends or my extended family who always used to, make me sing or listen to me sing, or my guru, or exams or competitions, etc. But never in my school was I ever acknowledged as a singing person, or like up until ninth. Up until ninth, I think I had a very, because I changed a couple of schools from wait, let me find the right word. I keep thinking posh, but posh is not the right word. Just, I was in a DPS school, which had sort of like a mix of everybody. Like but then I shifted to another school, which was one of the best schools in Gurgaon back then, and even now it is. And I had a tough time adjusting from that background to this background, and where everybody was fluent in English and studied really well. And from CBSE to ICSE also was a big jump for me. And so I think my personality was very hazy and stuff. So, and I never really put out my singing abilities out there. So I was never recognized as a singer till my ninth grade. And then when I changed schools, and then, the new school's principal, he really liked my voice. And then he realized that I sang, and then, organized like singing events in school. And I became known as, oh, she's Madhura, the singer girl from then on. But until then, I was never much of that. So why did I tell you this? About the old songs. Yes. So the old songs clash started only after like a point in my life when I started singing out in the open to my peers. Otherwise, it was just with older people, and they didn't really mind me singing old songs. They loved it anyway. But yeah.
Was it during this shift when you like discovered English songs as well?
Yeah. In fact, when I came to ninth grade, I think the two songs that I'd heard were the most popular ones. I think Love Story by Taylor Swift and Baby by Justin Bieber back then. And everybody would sing that. That and what was that? Tick tock on the clock. But
yeah.
No.
Kesha, I think.
Yeah.
Is that? Oh gosh, yeah. That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, I can't even remember the name of the song.
Me neither.
But, so I think these three were the big songs which I heard, never knew the lyrics to, and just like probably like messed up a lot of times. But when I came to ninth, I had like the very sweet people in the new school, and it really worked for my confidence and my personality also, just to find myself. And I remember my friend wrote down, like, she's just like, oh my God, you haven't heard any of these songs. And she just took out a huge list and wrote like, so I think 50 or 60 songs for me to just listen to and just, increase my repertoire of Western, English songs. And then I think she put down what was that? Simple Plan. Can anybody hear me? Am I talking? All those songs, just never heard of songs. But then I just sat and I took it as a challenge. I just sat down for like an entire night, heard all the songs, wrote lyrics for the ones that I liked, and that's when I started, enjoying like English music. Otherwise, till then, I wasn't exposed to that much.
Yeah, and I heard, I think in an interview that you're listening to a lot of Rahman sir songs as well. And something that was interesting to me is that, so, as part of my platform, I do a lot of like song analysis. And, I'm a big music nerd, and I make like 30-minute videos about one song. But like, I heard that you kind of did the same, and you and your brother would kind of analyze songs.
Yeah.
So like, what would you look for, and what kind of those did you notice?
Just things like, I think the first thing which we'd keep looking out for was, for example, in Jai Ho, or those kind of songs, the parts which Rahman sir chose to do, like there was another singer, whether it's a female singer or a male singer,
right.
But especially when there was another male singer, but there were still bits which Rahman sir was doing, like apart from the entire song. We used to focus on those bits and just be like, they sound, I don't know, just analyze those parts. Say, oh, why do you think he chose just this bit? And, why did he choose to not give it to the singer and do it himself?
Right.
And especially if there's another male singer, those kind of things. And just beats. I think Chaya Chaya was one of my brother's most favorite songs, which he used to, the part where the da, 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 da,
Yeah.
that part starts, right? It's just an insane, like a build, like it's not even like, how like in all these EDM songs, the beat increases and then it,
Yeah.
climaxes.
Right.
But here it just goes softer and softer and softer, and then it just climaxes, right? So those kind of things we just involuntarily find ourselves attracted to, and just constantly wait for that beat. So songs like that, I mean, if I were to start right now, I'll just keep going on, I think. Even that Kabhi neem neem kabhi shahad shahad, that part, the entire the bit which Rahman sir does,
Yeah.
I mean, it has such a unique identity in itself. Like some I think riffs and some stanzas in a song, sometimes they have the same tune towards of the first stanza, or they're similar in the same structure.
Right.
But just I find some of his songs, the interludes or the riffs that he puts, it's just an entirely, you can just use that and make an entire song out of it, out of that on its own.
Yeah.
And this song exists on its own, and it's just insane how he does that. It's I so we used to keep, I think even now when I'm talking, I keep thinking of more. But yeah, these kind of things basically.
Have you ever asked him these questions? I'm just curious.
Not really. I think not. I think something else, some other questions, but never. Because I feel like, to be very honest, I find him to be a man of such few words, right? So I expect that I just expect that he'll just be like, I don't know. I thought, because a lot of times, a lot of people, not just him, I find that a lot of people aren't really able to explain their creativity in too many words. So I tend to not ask questions which I feel like are either just going to make him be like, and I don't know. I just, those questions which interviewers ask. Apne, what did you think when you made this song? There's like a 1 or 2 line answer to it. Some people have an answer, some people don't.
Right.
So yeah. I don't think I asked him about these, but I asked him about other things though. Like, I don't know, because the first time I met him was in Berkeley, right? So, and that was the time I was figuring out what I should do, whether I should come to Berkeley or whether I should continue staying in Chennai, etc., etc. So just like what he thought I should do. And again, he had a very simple answer. He's just like, I think he believes in, if you're able to do something on your own, there's no need for you to join a class or a college. Since he, I think, taught himself most of the things that there were to learn. So I got advice based on that if you're able to do it on your own, just go ahead and do it. It's not like this college is good, so should join this college and only then will your career take off. It's not like that. So those kind of things, I guess.
Yeah, and just going back to your childhood, something very interesting happened when you're in 10th grade, as I referenced in the intro.
Yes.
When you decided to shift towards homeschooling so you could focus on music. What prompted this decision?
So remember the principal I told you in my 9th grade who really wanted me to join his school? So he was my dad's cousin's husband. So he's super into music, and he has like a lot of musician friends and stuff. So he'd actually introduced us to this another girl who'd homeschooled her entire life. So she started at the age of 3 and she started going for like painting classes. She learned Mandarin, photography, languages, and just, made use of her time, and also like violin apart from just studies. And she was really good with studies also. So, and at that time he was just trying to convince us that he said, why is she wasting her time in school for like 9 hours a day when she can be at home and, spend more time with music and stuff. So that was the intention when we decided to take that year and homeschool. But unfortunately, it didn't work. So our examples were of those people who started off homeschooling at a very young age. So they weren't really exposed to the school atmosphere. But I'd been in school for like 10 years by then already. And it was hard for me to suddenly just, I don't know, like manage my time well and, give more time to music. I was probably giving 2.5 hours a day to music when I was in school. after coming back from school and stuff. But even after I was homeschooling, I'd probably give 3.5 hours max. Otherwise, it didn't come that well. And remember, I told you that I wasn't that interested in practicing back then. I
Three
was
and a
just
half hours is good for somebody who's not good at practicing.
I mean, that was because I was pushed and I had to, and it was just it had to happen. Otherwise, there'd always be like fights at home. But so we started homeschooling with the intention that maybe I'll be doing like 6 hours of music, and like remaining time I'd be studying, and just like intense levels of just great discipline and management and time management. But obviously that didn't end up happening, because being as somebody who was in school for most of her life, I mean all of her life, and also as someone who's extremely extroverted and social, I needed to meet people. I needed to, and that really started coming down, and it wasn't for me basically that 1 year, although it did help my music a little bit, not as much as I hoped it would, but a little bit. And then I was just like, this is not for me. I'd like to finish my schooling properly and not do this. So then I joined school in 11th and 12th. But in retrospect, I do think that it could have been a missed opportunity. I mean, that I probably could have used it better. But I would, even now, given a choice, I'd pick school over homeschooling, because I think there are things that schools teach you, and just being around friends. And I feel that's why I feel so bad for the current generation who are just studying at home the entire time. I needed that school. I needed that time, because I've seen myself grow over the years. And if I didn't have that, I probably would have been different. And yeah, so I'd pick schooling over homeschooling.
Yeah, once you finished school, you took the decision to join Kalakshetra for university. And many guests in the past that have come on this podcast have gone to music colleges like yourself, but they've opted for colleges that aren't necessarily specific to one genre of music. So like Berkeley or CAM, the courses are like vocal music. It's not like Carnatic music. But your major at Kalakshetra is completely devoted to Carnatic music. So what made you opt for this like kind of specificity?
Right. So when I was done with 12th, I didn't really back then know about, I mean, obviously I heard about Berkeley and all those colleges, but my entire exposure to music was just pop songs, English, or Hindustani and Carnatic, because my mom used to learn when she used to learn basically. So when we decided to apply to colleges for music also, apart from just like, the academic colleges, there were two options. There was Shanti Niketan in Kolkata, and that was for Hindustani, while there was Kalakshetra, and my dance teacher was from Kalakshetra. So I didn't really have the plan of applying to all of those colleges. To be very honest, when I applied to Kalakshetra also, it was a very, let's see what happens sort of a thing. Like I really didn't think, one, I'd get into it. Two, didn't know how it was going to be. I just thought, because we'd heard so much about it in the first place, and we heard that it was super tough to get into and all that. So we thought, okay, if we get into it, then we'll see. Right. And my dad really heard a lot about it. So he's like, you should totally join the college because it will help you. And at that time, we just thought it doesn't matter if it's Hindustani or Carnatic, because music is music. And whatever I learn in Carnatic will obviously eventually help me in Hindustani, and vice versa. So Western music back then wasn't even that much of a consideration for me. But once I got in, I was just like, okay, this is just meant to be. So I came, and it was a proper shift. Like I'd only done Carnatic as a hobby back then, because my mom used to learn. So I'd learned a little bit with her. But then it was a proper shift. And then I started doing Carnatic. Only when I reached Berkeley in my third year was when I realized that, a music college has all of this, which is why I actually went to the summer program with the intention of applying there after I finished my fourth year, and, doing all the other things which music has to offer. Because back then, for me, music was either you were a playback singer, or you were a performer, or you were a music director. That's just the three aspects of music that I knew back then. But I think it helped that I went to Berkeley and I saw all of those, all the other things that you can do with music and all the other musicians that I met. So the question was, why did I choose Carnatic and this thing, right? Yeah, I chose it because back then that was all I had in my reach. My knowledge only extended to Carnatic or Hindustani. That's all. I didn't know anything beyond that. And now that I do, I've started dabbling in the other things also. Now that I know a little bit of Western, I've done a voice therapy course, and there was a lot of Western techniques that I learned in that. So yeah, I think a few years back, the moment I came back from Berkeley, I definitely regretted coming to Kalakshetra. I was just like, I should probably just applied then. What was I doing? But then seeing as how things happened, I just think that it was meant to be, because I met Sir in Berkeley, and then when I came back, he had an opportunity for me, and things just have been progressing from there. So I think it all happened for a reason, in a way.
And yeah,
Yeah.
Kalakshetra obviously goes very deep into the Carnatic art form, and part of your syllabus is to learn the major languages that Carnatic songs are based on: Tamil, Sanskrit, and Telugu, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And another part of your syllabus is to kind of go around visiting temples and to study the kind of historical side of things. And I'm curious to know, I have a little bit of exposure to Carnatic music, but I have like pretty much no like language or historical knowledge. So how much of a difference does learning the language or the historical context behind songs impact your singing?
So language definitely does help, because there's certain ways, like as a Telugu speaker, and with most of the Carnatic songs in Telugu, when I hear like a few people just butchering the words and just saying it as however it's coming to them, I feel language is important to understand the pronunciations and to understand the meaning of the song. But so I'll first cover the language part and then go to the history part. I'm sure you've heard of T.M. Krishna, right? He's a very famous Carnatic musician. Yeah. He says that, yes, lyrics do matter, like the words do matter, but it's also the raga bhavam, which is like the bhavam of the, like people constantly tend to put a lot of pressure on feel the lyrics, feel the meaning of the lyrics when you're singing. But the way they've been composed, the ragam itself has so much feeling, right? Obviously, because it's been chosen and it's been composed in this thing, that it does half the job. So if you understand the ragam properly, that's more than enough for you to enjoy it and also give entertainment to the audience. But that being said, yes, everybody should know what their singing means. And I've made the mistake of not knowing most of the times. And I had to, like go back and
I continue to make that mistake. So
yeah. It's tough to constantly be aware. But yeah, it is good to do that. But when it comes to the history part of it, so the intention of taking us around to all those temples and making us study the history and the heritage of Indian culture and all came from, obviously, to educate us about the culture and where we're doing, because it's good to know what you're singing. So it's good to know in what times did Tyagaraja make his songs, or in what times did Swati Tirunal make his songs, etc. That to that extent, knowledge is good. But a lot of our knowledge in college also was sort of directed to the dancers, because they had, a lot of their items, a lot of their pieces, history, etc., was involved with the temples and the temple sculptures and the temple architecture. That was really important for them theoretically. So it was like important for us too, but more so for them. So I think most of the syllabus in that way is sort of structured around dance, because dance is sort of the primary thing. If anybody from my college hears this, I'll probably be shorter, but I'm done with college, so I don't really care anymore. But it is, that it is the truth that dance is sort of the primary thing there. So the temples that we're taken around to, or the history that we study about, or the temple architecture that we study about, or the sculptures, it's all with relation to dance, because what mudras are the dancers making in the sculptures, what positions are they standing in, what bhavam is coming out of that. It's all dance related. But that being said, for me, history is always, I loved history, I loved ancient history, I wanted to go into archaeology, so I really did enjoy all of those. And it does help. It never does you any harm to know a little more about the times of what you were singing, But I don't think it played much of a role as far as our college was concerned, or what we were learning. Maybe if it's somebody who's researching more into Carnatic music and into the composers and the times when they made those music, then it does help them, obviously, because they're conducting a full research. But for us, it was more like an extra subject, which was just fun in a way to some people, not all. But yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the history side of things, if I'm not mistaken, your thesis or dissertation at Kalakshitra was based on, I believe, Muthuswami Dikshita's like Hindustani influences.
Yes.
And yeah, it's an interesting topic. I've read a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And how his compositions are influenced by Drupads and how there's like ragam influences. But you're the expert here. And I'd love to learn more. So could you just give us a gist of what you learned?
Yeah, sure. So why I took that topic in the first place was, so there's a little background to this.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that a lot of people, let's say they're like somebody who's never heard classical music before, and if you were to play Hindustani music to them, I found that they were enjoying themselves more than if a person who's never heard classical music hears Carnatic. Carnatic is more of an acquired taste, in my opinion, as in you need to grow up listening to it, or you need to have had some connection to it to be able to enjoy it. But Hindustani, I find that to not be the case, because most of the ragams and the way it's sung is just melody oriented, and it just feels nice when you're listening to it. But when you listen to Carnatic music, especially the concerts, it's not so much as melody or this thing, but more of a showcasing of your skills. So how quickly are you able to sing the sargam or the tans and the swaram and all of that? Yeah. So then when I started seeing that the kind of ragams I enjoyed in Carnatic were mostly derived from Hindustani. So, and then I went back further and I was like, oh wait, but these have all actually come from Hindustani, and this was Muthuswami Dikshita who brought them into. Obviously there are counterparts like Kalyani is Yaman or Shankarabharanam is Bilawal, but the way they're treated is different, right? I mean, there's Shankarabharanam in Carnatic is sung completely differently, while Bilawal in Hindustani, even though it has the same 7 notes, is sung differently. But there were a few ragams like, say, Bihag or, like Yaman Kalyan or these kind of ragams, which were from Hindustani, and they were also treated in a similar sort of way. And I found myself enjoying them just in the way that I was enjoying Hindustani. So yeah, basically Muthuswami Dikshita did have a lot of these influences, and he also sort of had his own system of ragams. Like we have the 72 Melakarta system right now. And back then he had different names and sort of different positionings. He had his own sort of a version of 72 Melakarta. So my thesis was based on a lot of theory, in the sense that obviously a little bit of history about how music started and about Muthuswami Dikshita and stuff. But it was also like analyzing each kriti. So you have various, like how in Western music you have vibratos or you have falsetto, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Similarly, there's ornaments in music in kritis also. Like, for example, if each line starts with the letter Sha, it's a sort of it's called something. And if it ends with an then there's like different rhyme schemes, etc., etc. So I analyzed all of that. I analyzed each ragam and I compared. So the Hindustani and Carnatic counterparts, I compared the two and how they're treated differently. So these kind of things. I think I took 5 compositions or 5 ragams, and then I did 1 composition in each. And we had to learn the compositions and sing it also. Yeah, basically.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. How unique is this to Muthuswami Dikshita? The kind of Hindustani influence?
Obviously, other people picked it up. Right. I mean, after he brought those ragams and he sort of made them a little Carnatic, there were other composers who composed in those ragams. But it was essentially just Muthuswami Dikshita who traveled the entire length of India and picked up all these ragams and then brought them back to South. And I think his brother was the one who brought the violin into the Carnatic music. Till then, Carnatic music did not have the violin. So it was him who brought it. So it is pretty unique to him. He was sort of the flag bearer of Hindustani influence.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I find it really interesting because, I mean, there's probably literature out there, but just in general, I don't see as much like Carnatic academia. Like you see a lot of like Western music academia and you have like music theory journals and things like that. But there isn't as much, at least like not as much I know of. There's probably things out there, but just out of curiosity, like how much literature was there on the kind of topics you were exploring?
So on this, not as much. So I'd had to, obviously there's a lot of literature on Muthuswami Dikshitar and his compositions and analysis of his compositions, etc. But not his Hindustani influence. As in, you had to like sort of go in depth and pick those instances yourself and sort of figure out, okay, this is how. And I think about the not being much of academia in Carnatic, I think it's because there is literature out there. I mean, my other batchmates who are also doing their own dissertations on different topics, but I think it's all too contained in the sense everybody's just doing the same thing. Like everybody's researching there's Tevarams, devotional songs, so they're all researching devotional songs. I see very rare articles or papers out there about a comparison between Carnatic or something else, and just stepping out of the Carnatic gates. It's all done within, like they're all researching on Tyagaraja, they're all researching on Muthuswami Dikshitar, they're all researching on their compositions. It's all just one nice, they've made one bubble and they're all just working. And they're beautiful, literature about all of this out there. And people have done their PhDs and stuff and, published their papers, etc. But I don't really find comparisons or maybe I haven't looked enough and I probably should. But when I was researching and I wanted to, search, didn't really find as much. But there was ample literature to learn about everything in the past. Like they've got that covered.
Right.
They've not missed a single moment in history. It's all there. But I think they could make things more interesting in Carnatic, but they're not really doing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, this goes a bit into kind of my musical background, but when I was graduating high school, I took this music theory class for 2 years, and our final paper was comparing two songs from two different cultures. So I had chosen a Carnatic piece, Kapali in Mohan Ragam. And I had chosen this I think it's called the Allman Brothers Band. It's kind of this old-fashioned rock kind of thing. So yeah, I was just looking into obviously Kapali's Mohanam, and there were like solos in the band piece that was based on major pentatonic and kind of drawing parallels there. But as I was researching for that, there wasn't much out there in terms of comparison. Yeah. So,
and I think they could do a lot with just comparison. Or to be really honest, even Hindustani and Carnatic comparison, I think they've not run out of material. There can be a lot, but there might be. But as far as I've looked, I didn't really find much. But yeah, it's there, but it could be much more. But yeah, comparison is always fun. That's how you understand a style of music, is when you compare it with something else, and both those, how they're similar and yet different. I think that's a great way to look at something.
Absolutely. And speaking of comparison, we've talked about the kind of Carnatic side of things. So let's shift to the West and talk a bit more about your time at Berkeley. And one of my previous guests actually went to the same summer program that you did, Apurva Krishna, who's a violinist. Yeah. And she, like you, had gone there after a background fully in Indian classical. And I think for her, it was a bit more extreme. Like she was only in Carnatic music. So it was a big kind of culture shock for her. How much of a culture shock or musical culture shock, I should say, was it for you? Or was it at all?
It wasn't a musical culture shock for me. Because like I said, I'd been exposed to a little bit of Western music by then. I think when I just started singing like English songs and stuff, I had that little Indianized, the gamakams, which I just end up giving to English songs anyway. And I was constantly made fun of, and I learned to get out of it. So I think I dealt with my share of, that bit of, I wouldn't call it culture shock, but just learning how to separate the two genres of music. I did that in school. And but when I went there, I sort of knew what I was going there for. Like I knew it was going to be Western and stuff. For me, actually a lot of fun, to be very honest, because I enjoyed trying to find similarities with my Hindustani, Carnatic, the scales, and then the ragams, the similarities there, and just learning about the whole sight reading and all of that, and even singing for that matter. I think I took R&B a little bit because I never tried R&B back then. We tried a little bit of those songs in our ensembles and stuff, and it was more fun for me then because I was learning new stuff in music. I always, you put me any sort of music, I'd be comfortable. Whether you put me, I think, in a completely different genre of music, and I'd still enjoy myself there. And obviously, it takes some time to pick things up, but I had fun. So yeah, it was more just like, oh, I want to learn this and I want to learn that. Oh, this is new. Oh, that's new. So it was just more fun for me than it was actually never a culture shock, actually. And I loved meeting the new people there, and I loved coming across people from all over the world actually there who'd come to that summer program, and some were pianists, some were cello players, some were singers, some were just, yeah, it was great.
And well, one special person you met there was
Yes.
very obviously Rahman sir.
Yeah.
How exactly did that happen? I know his daughter was in like the same class.
One of my, yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually, from this, when I first came, when Unakaga first came out, I didn't tell people the story because I didn't want them to know like the entire details of it. But now I'm just like, now it's fine. It's been 3 years since it's out. So not much. So I was just in one of my classes. His daughter was there, Rahima. And for me, it was just oh, she's from Chennai. I didn't know she was his daughter.
Right.
And when I heard that she's from India and then she's from Chennai, I was like, oh yes, when I go back, I have a buddy from Berkeley who's in Chennai, I can, hang out with and, reminisce. So that was the extent of it. And she told me that she was staying in a house, that I should come over, probably for lunch and such. Very sweet. And I was supposed to go for like 2 weeks. We just kept hanging out, but never really went to each other's houses or something. But I think in my second week, I randomly found out that she was his daughter. Somebody just told me that, oh, she's AR Rahman. I was like, huh? Because she did tell me her name was Rahima Rahman, but I never really could, because I didn't. So for me, he exists as himself, like an independent entity. I don't think of him as a man with a family and with kids and stuff. Most of the people that I look up to or that I follow on this thing, unless they put out pictures with their family, I just look at them as, just them and their work and as a person. That's all. Right. So for me,
the name on the iPod.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking he had like a family, he obviously did, but then I just didn't think that he would be somebody who had a family. But 2 weeks later, I just hear from somebody that, oh, she's his daughter. And I was like, wait, what? Are you talking about? And I think a foreigner told me. So I was like, are you talking about Slumdog Millionaire AR Rahman? Because how many AR Rahmans are there anyway? But they're like, yeah, bro. And then I was supposed to go to her house that night or a few days later or something. And again, never expected to meet him at all during that entire trip because I thought he'd be doing his own thing. But I happened to meet him then, and then, and we spoke for a while, and he was very sweet. So it was not just me. There were a couple of other friends who we'd all come together. So all of us are, I think, just chilling at her place, and he happened to be there, and all of us just, hung out, spoke a little bit, and I'm grateful that he remembered me once I came back, and, he reached out to me again for that song and stuff. So yeah, that's basically how I met him. Just never expected to meet him. Even when I got to know that she was his daughter, I was just like, wow. But again, never really imagine that, oh, he'll be there or
right,
or that I'd ever run into him. I just never thought that's going to happen. And when it did, I was just like, oh, didn't think that we'd stay in touch when I came back. And then that happened. And I was like, oh, so just nice things kept happening. But yeah.
Am I right in saying that like you had a small jam with him in the US as well?
Yeah. I mean, so the day we met, I think he does this to everybody who says, I told him that I'm a singer who's come from this. And he just like, sing what you sang for the audition. And I was just like, it's 9 in the night and someone asking me to sing something for him randomly in a very informal setting. But I did sing.
What was that, out of curiosity? Sorry.
I sang Lithium by Evanescence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's what I sang for my audition in Berkeley at that time. So he just asked me to sing that and I did. And I think we were like a group of friends now, his children, and then me, and then a couple of other people who we met in Berkeley. So, and all of us, since we were all musicians, every time he put us in the same room, we just end up singing and just jamming. And sometimes he'd be there, sometimes he'd not be there. So he's just like heard us, and that's also happened. But yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was back then. It was to me. Even now, when I'm talking about it, it's just like, did that just really happen? But yeah.
And yeah, I've read that one of your future goals is to kind of learn more about jazz and to kind of combine the worlds of Hindustani, Carnatic, and Western music.
Yes.
Yeah. Did your time at Berkeley kind of play a role in forming that vision?
Yeah. So ever since I was a kid, like I said, my only three eyes into the music industry was whether you're a playback singer or a music director or a performer. That's all. So obviously, since I never really thought I'd become a playback singer. So I just thought I'd make my own music and stuff. And back then I thought I'd like to make timeless music like SD Burman and all of these people did back then. So, but when I went to Berkeley, that's when I heard a little bit of jazz, and my private instructor back then who heard me, she said, with your Carnatic and this classical background that you have, jazz would really be good if you were to try it out. So I've been meaning to, but I think the 2 years of pandemic. So when you mail me saying that music therapy and all of this,
yeah.
I realized that in those 2 years my focus shifted, right? I mean, it was completing college in any way possible, and second, it just became coming back to Chennai and stuff. So I completely I think music therapy and all just took a backseat in my head until like a few months back, when a musician friend of mine who lives in Chennai, he was like, you were talking about music therapy and stuff, where have you? And I was just like, yeah. And then now that I remember, I'm just like, oh yes, now I want to get back into it a little bit. But so when I spoke about music therapy, it came from the idea of like this. So me making my own music, which combines all forms of music that I know. And like I said, I've always found people enjoying my voice, and I've heard people say that that they've been at peace and they found it very calming, and stuff like that. So I wanted to tap into that part, that emotion with my music. So I'm trying to do something right now, trying to let that creativity of me. So I'm very critical of myself. So whatever I make, I'm just like, what have you done? And then I discard it immediately. So I'm trying to get out of that horrible mindset and be as critical as is necessary and not overly. But yeah, so Berkeley did sort of make me want to include Western also, because now that I have a little bit of Western, and now that I'm learning the piano, and I learned a little bit of Western also recently. So just wanted to, combine all of that and do something on my own. Yes, it still is a dream, which I'm trying to make into a reality for now.
And yeah, speaking of things you're kind of working on right now, you mentioned at the start of the episode that you're starting teaching. Yeah, just in general, like what kind of new perspectives do you think you've gained from teaching?
The biggest one was that I thought I'd be a really impatient and a horrible teacher. Because my only experience with teaching was either when I'd like try to make my mom learn a riff of some song or something, or my brother or my friends, and I'd just instantly transform into this grumpy person who's just like this. So very impatient, basically, not very patient. So I thought I'd be a very bad teacher in that sense. But I realized that I could be extremely patient with students, and I realized, so what I find, and I still find that most enjoyable when I'm teaching, is like I said, the things which I found easy, which I had taken for granted, and I just assume that everybody will be able to get them, right? But when I see them struggling with something which I once found easy, now I have to back calculate and try to figure out how to break it down and make it easier for them. And I love that process, and I love breaking it down for them and then giving it to them bit by bit. And then once it all comes together and they get it, and then I'm just like, yes. It's just a great sense of accomplishment. Like, I think most of my students, when I started off with them in June of 2020, they could like hold a note, but they weren't, to be honest, trained basically. Like if I were to just sing Sarigama Padanisa for them, they'd probably sing Sarigama correctly but mess up Padanisa, or vice versa, something like that. There is music somewhere, but it needs to be just taken out and
Right.
shaped properly. So I take a trial class before, and then I figure out, okay, this needs to be worked on. I was just talking to my mom, I think, before we had this podcast, and I was telling her she thinks I think very too little of myself, but I think I have a little confidence now, I think, which came from teaching. Like now I know that if I hear somebody, I can figure out, okay, that this is where they need to work on, or this is something they need help on, or this is something they're good at. That's something which I never thought I'd be given myself credit for, to be honest, that that's something as a musician that I'm capable of. And I think now every musician can do that, to be very honest. Anybody who's practiced knows where they are. But so teaching sort of gave me confidence in a way that, Madhura, you're not as bad as you think you are. You do know something, which is why you're able to teach these people. So just stop being so mean to yourself. So that's something which teaching, I think, really helped me with.
I mean, from our eyes, like, everything. So
no, I really don't. But I know a little bit, which I'm trying to accept now, that, okay, there is some things which and obviously a lot of things which you don't know. You're not as much of a dud as you think you are. But yeah.
No, I think the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So I think in a way, the most knowledgeable people end up saying they know nothing. Like Rahman sir often says like he knows very little, but like he knows everything. Like, come on.
He knows a lot. But I think, that's where it comes from. When you know this much, you also know that there's this much that you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's part of your knowledge. And that's why you're like, listen, I don't know this much, but this is not enough.
Right.
To others, it just looks like, oh my God, you know this much already. But I don't think that's where I come from. I think I come from came from rather, not now, not anymore. But at one point, I wasn't trusting of what I knew and what I didn't know. It was not that I knew this much and that I had to know a lot more. It was just that I never believed that I knew anything. Do you understand the difference? That to sort of think less of myself, basically. That we couldn't, but actually I knew it, but then in my head just be like, you can't know that, it's fine, don't overwork your head, or just be basically a very mean person to myself for the longest part of my life. I'm learning to get out of that, but yeah.
And with the music that you teach, what kind of age group generally are your students?
I have working women. I think in their 30s, and I have, I think, somebody in their, I think everybody's in their 30s. And I have 3 kids, 2 siblings and one very cutie kid. He's actually 10 years old, but he's very good. He's very, very talented. I mean, at that age, I don't think it's easy to hold a note that well, but he's very good. And the other 2 kids that I started teaching, they had no background in music, and it was very hard for them to sing sa. Like they'd sing sa, pa, sa, la, sa, they could sing, and pa a little bit, but sa would be tough. Just the identity of each notes, to get that clear and stuff. But now they sing really well, and I feel great knowing that they do.
How different is it teaching kids versus teaching adults? Like, do you change your approach in any way?
With the really young boy, yes, I do, because he tends to, and kids that age tend to lose patience really quickly. Yeah. So when I'm teaching an adult, it's obviously an hour of a class, and I expect them to come with this practiced, and it's obviously different with them. But with him, I can't be too strict with him, because that might make him hate me or the music or the class, and that's a very tricky way to maneuver. So you have to not exhaust him, but also make it fun at the same time, and make it challenging for him, because he likes proving himself. So just figuring it out. But that's, I think, but I don't generally go for kids. One, because it takes, I think, double the effort of what it would take with older people, and for that I'd have to be fully into teaching, and full-time teaching for me to do that. But right now, since I have so much of my own, which I do, like my own practice and my own music, that's sort of a commitment I don't give. But because he's so good, he picks up really well, and I enjoy it. But he's the only kid. Otherwise, the other two kids that I have, I think they're 12 and 10, or probably 14 or 13 and whatever. It's sort of older. But there I have a help from the elder sibling. She's older to the younger one. So because I take their classes together, the older one's extremely mature and very smart, and she's very good with learning. Obviously, they do have those little lazy things which kids do, like they forget that they had to send me a recording or those things which older people don't.
Right.
They're very good with managing this thing. But she helps me out with teaching her sister. So whenever there's a language barrier, or if she's not getting what I'm saying, then she sort of helps me out. So there I don't really see that I have to change my teaching tactics, because they're very good students. I mean, now that I'm talking about it also, I keep thinking, wow, they're really good. They're not like other kids their age. Because I had another kid of, I think, their younger age, but I don't take her class anymore. She had a really tough time because I think she was also being pushed into class by her parents, and she didn't want to practice, and it's online, and it's not understanding what I'm saying. So those kind of things, just if it's in person, it's a different feel altogether. But when it's online, it's a different feel. So that is the reason I don't generally go for younger kids. But the older ones, I think they're very, and the ones who come are the ones who take out time from their busy schedules, right? So they know not to take it for granted, and they do well. They tell me that I have not practiced this, and so it's a very peaceful class taking experience for me. I've heard horror stories from other people, but thankfully that I have not had a single one of them. Touch wood. I've got all nice people.
That's great. So yeah, we've spoken for a while, and I kind of want to start to wrap up. So yeah, just in general, we've spoken a lot about kind of plans that you have and things that you're looking towards, but in the immediate future, what can we expect from you? What are you thinking of doing?
In the immediate future, there is obviously going to be like playback stuff happening on the side. There's actually a very new project I'm working with, which is what the rehearsal for today was. It's a sort of a Tamil pop song, but it has its own music video where there's like a proper dance routine and stuff. So I'm dancing, kind of sort of acting as the singer in the video, and also singing that song.
I see.
So that's going to be a first time thing for me. So that is something which you can expect in like a sort of physical, I think, near time future. But otherwise, I think what I'm doing right now is trying to be a more consistent musician, in the sense, like I have all these followers on Instagram, but I barely put out stuff. And I think the pandemic played a role, because I just shut down to such an extent that I stopped putting out content, and I stopped sharing stuff. So I want to like put out more covers and just engage more with people, and not become one of those she's had a song at some time and now she's just there sort of a person, which is not the case. And also, like I said, I think what you can expect from me abhi is just probably covers and just songs which might come out. But in a few months time, I'm trying to push myself to come up with a song. I think I might write my own music and produce a song. So I'm learning production and stuff right now for that. And piano also, just for that.
Right.
So yeah, that might come out in a few months time. But yeah, that's something which I'm trying to make myself do.
And speaking of making music, this was something you mentioned earlier on in the recording as well. But you've talked about this kind of childhood dream of making timeless music. And in the current kind of musical landscape, there's so much content out there. Everything's very kind of short form. Things kind of just come and go. Do you
also
think
like
it's
real music, just like 30 seconds tracks, and
do you think that makes it any more difficult to make music that stands the test of time?
Actually, I'd like to, when I think the Madhura who said timeless music was what, 5 years back, 6 years back. I don't really think the goal should be to make timeless music. Like recently I was talking to another friend of mine, and I was telling them how somebody's goal should not be in music, especially, that I want to be famous, or I want to be a famous playback singer. It should be that I want to, like, this is something that I like doing and I wish I can do that. Because the moment you say famous, or the moment you say timeless, there are a lot of other factors playing into it, which is not in your hand. And that's not something which you can hope for. So what you can hope for is making music which somebody likes, and if they like it, they're going to keep listening to it, or they're not. But as a musician, and because you're going to want to put out content, and the rest is just, it's in the hands of the universe and the people, and it's for you that you're doing it, not for, obviously you want people to enjoy your music, but I think those kind of expectations, not that they're unrealistic, it's always nice to have high hopes and high dreams and aim big. But aiming big would be like, for me, being able to write my song and make sort of music which I want to make. And that would be the biggest, because for me, I find that so hard, because I am constantly second guessing myself, constantly just not happy with whatever I do. And so for me, the biggest thing would be just to, with ease, just write a song, make it and then just put it out. That's my aim big. So for me, that would be, so, which is why I corrected myself just a few days back when I thought about timeless music and all that. It's too much to ask of from something. It's all you can do. Your job is to just do what you can, and then whatever happens. So, but I do wish that people enjoy my music like I'm enjoying old songs even now. Like that's something which I want, that for it to bring happiness. But that's about it, I think. Not beyond that.
Yeah, that's really well put.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of talking, but what people know you as is not primarily as a storyteller. Well, it is as a storyteller, but in a very different way, in a musical way. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to request a few songs, if that's okay.
Yes. And I'll just look them up, and if I can sing it, I'd love to sing it for you.
Sure. First
Which
one,
ones do you have in mind?
Every single interviewer has asked you this. I'm gonna get a lot of angry comments if I don't make you sing
Fair
this.
Enough. Fair enough. Unakaga vaazha nenikkiren, usuroda vaasam kudikiren, udava madikayil unnatha madikiren, ஒரு 100 வருஷம் பேச நினைச்சு தோளில் தூங்கிடுவேன், உனக்காக வாழ நினைக்கிறேன், உசுரோட வாசம் குடிக்கிறேன், ஒரே மழை நம்ம போத்திக்கணும், கைய கூட கதவாக்கி சாத்திக்கணும், ஒரே குளிர் ஒரே முத்தம் ஊட்டிக்கணும், உன்னை மட்டும் உசுராக பார்த்துக்கணும், நில மழை மொழி பல பனீருள் கிளிக்கல நீயும் நானும் திகட்டு ரசிக்கணும், உனக்காக வாழ நினைக்கிறேன், உசுரோட வாசம் பிடிக்கிறேன், உசுரோட வாசம் பிடிக்கிறேன்.
I mean, that song was one. I remember, I think it came out probably like 5 p.m. in India, I think, if I recall correctly.
Yes, and 4 p.m. I think.
Oh, 4 p.m. Yeah, sorry. My bad. Yeah. And it was one of those where they just kind of announced the premiere out of nowhere. So like you could click the premiere. And
I didn't know about it either.
So you could just see the description, but like before the song came out, you couldn't see anything else. I remember just seeing this name I'd never seen before. I was like, who is this person? So I literally spent those like 10 minutes like Googling, and all I could see was this like picture in Berkeley. So I was like, must be some Berkeley student.
Yeah, I think that happened to a lot of people though. I mean, within that 1 hour, I got like some 80 messages on Messenger and Instagram and just followers on Instagram. My public account back then had like 100 followers and like 3 videos of me back then. Because I had made the public account just Amy. I thought I'll come around to making covers at some point in my life, and I'd use this for that. but I just didn't. And I had those 3 videos and just followers and messages, and I was like, what is happening? And then I got to know that the song is coming on, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But it was just in intense 2 days.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's
Yeah,
great,
so
though.
that, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
obviously you're a wonderful Carnatic vocalist as well. So
I've taken a break for like so long now. I'd gone for a vacation to Goa like from
right.
15 to yesterday, I think.
Mm.
And I've just been out of it till now. So, okay. Mm. Yeah, I'll just sing like a little bit. Sarasi jana bhama pahi sarasi jana bhama pahi sakala muni sannuta charita varasya nandura puradisha व्यासादि मुनि सन्नुता चरण सा निपनि परि सनि पसनि पमनि पम पमरि सरि गम गम प सनि पनि परि सनि पसनि पमनि पम पमरि स रि गम गम पदनि स पनि म प ग म पमरि सनि सनि रे स म गम पनि म प नि पमरि स Pamarisa, Marisa, Nisa, Sapa, Pasa, Sani, Pama, Marisa, Rigama, Padani, Sariga, Marisa, Risa, Sani, Papa, Risa, Sarigama, Padani, Sara, Sijana, That's just the Pallavi part of Anate Varnam.
Right. You had sung this in your Kalakshetra concert as well, right?
Yes, you've seen my concert.
Yeah. I mean, it was on YouTube, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I've learned this Varnam as well, so it was immediately, I was like, yeah. Quite a while
it's
back.
It's a beautiful Varnam, right?
Yeah.
I love the Varnam.
Not in general.
One of my favorite Varnams. Not in general, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah, just the final question. This is a question I ask to every guest. It's nothing special, but it's just kind of tradition here. Final question. What's on your playlist right now?
This is going to be a whole other conversation for like, I think 10 minutes easily. I've just been obsessed with K-pop and just Korean like ballads and just a lot of that recently. Like insanely. So my entire playlist, I think day before yesterday was Yun Hi by Mohit Chauhan from Tanu It's Manu. But it's this song called Keh Dena Yun Hi Kitne Dafe Dil Ne Kaha Dekhi Suni Kitne Dafe. Anyway, so when I get obsessed with a song, I just listen to it the entire time. And thanks to Spotify, it just, once I play that song, it obviously starts recommending similar songs after that. So it's fun. But it's just been Korean stuff, man. It's just, I've been listening to BTS, EXO, and just a lot of dramas have these OSTs, like the soundtracks, which are these beautiful songs, beautiful tracks in the background. And I just go search for them and then I listen to those. And it's been this song called Butterfly. There's a song called Butterfly by an old band in Loveholics. It's a band called Loveholics for those who care enough to go and search for the song. It's Loveholics, and it's this beautiful song that I'd been obsessed with that for like days. Otherwise, it's BTS and their songs. So yeah, that's been on my playlist for a while. I actually learned Korean. I can read and write a little bit. Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole fully.
That's
yeah, that's what I was
insane.
doing in my
Wow.
lockdown, basically. Yes. After I got done with my concert, I was just like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And it was sort of like an identity crisis sort of a thing happening, because I spent like 5 years of my life aiming to finish college. And then once that was done, I was just like, now what am I doing? And then I had I had nothing to like list properly. So I was just, and then I fell down this Korean drama, Korean thingy. And then I wanted to, because I found that the subtitles were sort of sometimes not the same as what, and as it always is the case, sometimes,
Right.
the feeling is not always captured when you translate it. And I found like boards and all in the background which I want to read. It's just this weird thing that I had. I was just like, I want to learn it now. So I took a course online to
Wow.
read and write. Not as good yet, but I can manage a little bit. I need more speaking practice to understand the songs also. I love the lyrics which BTS and all have come up with. Just beautiful lyrics, beautiful songs, beautiful tracks, and just the way it all progresses. It's just, if anybody has not heard K-pop and if they think it's just something everybody's popular and it's overdone, it's not. There's some really good music in K-pop. You also probably just message me on Instagram and I'll suggest stuff. That's how I'm the unofficial brand ambassador for Korean.
If you want to get in touch with the well-known playback singer, just become a fan of K-pop.
Yes. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, so in terms of
Yeah.
the episode, I guess we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so
Okay,
much for your time.
Thank you
amidst your
so
busy
much.
schedule. Thank you to the listeners as well for tuning in. Make sure to go and check out Madhura's music and her social media. I'll leave all of the relevant links in the description. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you all. Thank you for listening.
Well, that was Madhura on our 14th episode of the Indoencers Podcast. And thank you to everyone that has tuned in. You can find us at the Indoencers, spelled THEINDOENCERS, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can use the links in the description. Likewise, you can page at theindoencers.wordpress.com or through the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the Indoencers Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.